We'll start about 30 seconds a minute early and maybe give us some time for questions we wouldn't have otherwise. Um, so my name is Andrew Welchel, work for Savient. As you can probably see from the screen, I won't try to give an introduction because that kind of eats up some time. But you can see there's some letters and combinations of letters. Happy to talk about some of those things. But as you can kind of guess, I tend from career-wise, I focus a lot on identity. Prior roles at RSA and other places. But today we're going to focus on what's on that topic of the screen, which is this focal point of certainly AI. That's going to be a use case, but it's really going to be identity and more specifically non-person entities as well. So taking a step back and looking at the entire scope of many identities out there, one of the challenges we run into is it's not just one identity or one type of identity, but we've got multiple identities trying to secure multiple types of workloads, multiple types of resources. And so in this particular case, what we also see is a new challenge is everything on that bottom left-hand side, we now have AI components that are accelerating, moving faster, or helping somehow, right? And then also on the right-hand side, we've got applications, APIs, workloads, et cetera, that are also accelerating that piece. Now, what we're going to dig into is what does that little circle mean? Who's in that circle? And we're going to talk about that some more. Now, before we go into that, though, the interesting thing that we have to keep in consideration is that entire set of bubbles, a microcosm is also getting pushed, not just to CONUS elements, like even here in the Augusta area, in the DC area, but really across all the AORs. As we're seeing AI components develop and be available, and there's some great ones out there. I'll talk about some examples from Microsoft. There's some other ones out there as well. But as those develop, fundamentally, there's an identity associated with that will have a certain levels of access. That's a little bit of a prelude, a little teaser trailer that you'll see. But as we see it, the challenge is, how do we do it? Because there's no point in trying to not use AI. It's a tool that we can use against our adversary, and we want to do that. But the key is, how do we do it and do it securely, right? Now, before we go into the technical matters, it does help to kind of look at it from a kind of an operational use case scenario. So I kind of draw this story out for as an example to kind of see, hey, if you're using these tools, just as one example, where and how of a scenario would it be helpful? So in this case, we take a scenario of John Smith. He's starting an exercise. He's assigned to a unit. The unit is now adopting some AI components. It might be for fire control, might be for a cop application, might be something else. But whatever it is, it's going to be key to that mission. And then along with that cannot be forgotten. A key to these elements is, if you've been to the Army TIMS or some other scenarios and even discussed in some places here, being able to use the EP electronic protection for MCON can really be strategic. It can be tactically valuable, but also strategic in how you operate. What that basically means is traditional ways of being connected. You have to adapt to that. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. But that's another bullet you have to be aware of. And the other item is, if you're going to have those capabilities, you need to make sure you can just get your basic applications. You're going to be distributing intelligence products or just informational, maybe like logistics information, distributing it to SharePoint or something like that. You need to make sure you have access to that and access to it quickly. The key last item there to this kind of inherent is just the fact that the speed at which John Smith can get to these things is really key to the acceleration. Now, if we twist that Rubik's Cube of information a little bit of that use case scenario and look at it from a requirements perspective, what this really means is looking at really in three spaces. One is the operational, and this is the basic of scale. The second of the operational is looking at from this EP maneuvering aspects. Whatever you do has to survive those EP maneuvers, has to run, has to reconnect, and it has to be secure when it reconnects. The next item is really more the technical, which you see in the middle, and that's what we're going to focus on. But I still highlight these others because it's really about the total success. So this one in the middle is really what we're focused on, which is the NPE, or more specifically a service principal within the Microsoft realm. And then it's also on the right-hand side is about being able to provide the service delivery that can stay constant. So you can onboard, you can offboard, you can onboard, whether it's NPE regular users, in the face of spectrum. If you have spectrum that's reprioritized for a variety of reasons, changes of wavelengths, etc., you need to still have the ability to bring people on, take people out, and reassign resources. The last ones are kind of, I wouldn't say necessarily obvious, but certainly are common themes you'll hear with regards to being power management and field serviceability. So all those are certainly key for that success, but we're going to focus in on that middle section really briefly. Now we're going to take a look at, this is going to a little bit technical here, but it's worth noting because there is a lot of AI components. We're going to talk about a Microsoft example. And I will make a quick note that in this element, we're going to be talking about the open AI components. However, there still is a lot of opportunities for unsupervised machine learning and supervised machine learning. So if you're not familiar, that's kind of the clustering or bucketing method, and also the predictive analytics. Still both very valuable. And I'll also add that the same techniques to manage NPEs will be the same thing that you'll do here as well. So the NPE types that you'll see from a Microsoft perspective, if you've worked in that space before, is something called a service principal. If you ever use Active Directory or those types of environments, very similar to a service account in a Windows realm. The difference is you get very, very granular. It's not just about assigning access to a particular machine like you used to do in Windows, but in the Azure world, this is a graph API, and you can get very specific about what types of permissions. So if anyone is familiar with the Midnight Blizzard, we won't spend all of our time talking about that. That was one of the challenges that you had in that kind of breach and threat scenario, was someone was able to extend out those permissions way more than anyone really wanted it to. But in this particular case, what we really want to be able to do is address the threat that can come to these service principals. And also remember, as we're talking about this here, this is maybe a small microcosm of a small space. And we had that other big first slide and then expand globally. You can imagine the immense amount of service principals that would expand. Now, if you look to the right, this kind of gives examples of types of threats of individual types that a attacker might go for, right? You certainly have the kind of taking over the NPE. You also have the resource exhaustion type scenario. It's almost like a denial of service. And then the last one, which is also really important but sometimes overlooked, is the thing that happened in that Midnight Blizzard scenario, where basically people took existing capabilities and extended it. They took an existing capabilities to access individual resource and then extended that to do a single sign-on and get to additional resources. But we're going to talk about today how to have additional protection for those. So you may be familiar with some of the DoD cloud resources that as we define them. There's a variety of both kind of types like enterprise as well as fit for use. So I just generically called those the DoD cloud resource. The ones on the bottom is an example of tactical deployed resources. The key here is that first element about having a maneuver capacity assigned to these resources. So the key element I want to highlight is the fact that as you're looking at the capabilities you'll really want to have something that can address these in both types of scenarios. So in this particular scenario, we have a Savient, which is as a reference example. The key thing that we're also connecting is if you look to the right, you see this thing that says SPN permissions, both on the top and the bottom. But all this eventually comes back to guardrails and ownership. So the ownership from the AI perspective, at the end of the day, if we're managing this SPN permissions, come back to two things. Someone's asking for access, and the mission owner is then able to have visibility and access to that risk. Because if the AI that you're leveraging does not apply or you don't want to extend that risk, then this approach gives you the ability to manage those permissions, or even if you've had given out permissions, you can pull those back when the time is done. One quick note I kind of slide in here is just, and this is kind of leading to the fact that a lot of these capabilities are actually in place today, or I would say available in a market space. It's not a, a low, R&D type effort, but it's actually some capabilities that exist. I kind of give this example to say, hey, if you look at some existing FedRAMP or IL5, IL6, et cetera, scenarios that are out there, essentially the concept that you have here is it's the ability to take those authorization elements, those capabilities, and you just basically take it with you. I'll have a visual in a minute. They'll explain how we take this bubble here, and you can take it with you from a disconnected state. Before we go too far, I do have a demo to show you. And in that demo, we'll kind of show this flow. That's why I'll kind of take a pause on this and kind of like let you get a sense so you can get an impression as we go through the demo. But you'll see here in just a moment that you'll have the first part of this is the actual creation of a service principal. And that's kind of, think of that as the onboarding of your NPE. The second part of that is the ability to give additional access when the time is required. That's kind of the access update for that service principal or the NPE. And then we'll also have this next section you'll see in the demo as well, which is the access review. That'll kind of give you the chance to say, hey, at any point in time, you may want to know, does this service principal still have the same level of access when you first assigned it? Does it have more that you didn't know about? You need to pull something back, right? And certainly, when the mission set is over, maybe it's an episodic exercise last 2 weeks. Certainly, it makes sense to go ahead and shut those down, right? Now, the one last bit I'll highlight before we hop to the demo is just a illustration of how this would flow into supporting both a enterprise scenario. If you say, for instance, you have it for training and preparation CONUS, but as you bring it outside of that to a potentially disconnected, there's a level of consistency of code deployment that can be valuable in that the exact same images that we would use for enterprise hosted are the exact same images we would do here, which means they've gone through STIG scans and all those different types of things. But what you see as it kind of builds out is essentially you have that authorization engine for the NPEs on the left-hand side, and then we kind of highlight that all this AI stuff. And I say AI in general, it could be the open AI. It could also be TensorFlow or something else that's sitting on a Raspberry Pi or some sort of IoT device. But whatever that component is from the NPEs, you've got that to manage it. But then as you have division field applications, this could be a COP application. It could be something else. Then that same platform can manage that access. So again, you think about the use case of John Smith. What is a challenge we're trying to address? Like rapid onboarding, rapid offboarding when it's time to move. This can then facilitate that. But then it's a question of facilitate it where, right? So from there, we can now take these components existing as Kubernetes containers. We can now put them on an Azure stack. And once you have that in place, you can then take that to the other deployed environments. I will quickly add that I realize sometimes these deployed environments have different hardware elements and requirements, and that's fine. This scenario was flexible, so if you have a specific, PEO-C3N stack that you need to use, that's fine, that's great. We can adapt, and then it's just it deploys to that instead. So now it's time for the demo, so stand by. Hold on. Okay. Double click it. Got to click the right spot. So what we're doing is starting from the beginning. If you remember that kind of sideways U, it's kind of going in that circle. We're starting from that beginning. And what we're doing first was we're creating that NPE, that service principal. We have a generic name for a service account, but that covers a broad spectrum of different types of access or different types of accounts that are all still NPEs at the core of it. In this particular case, we're selecting the Microsoft Entra SPN. You can see now that the next steps, we talked about mission owner, right? And mission access owner, who owns that risk. We can now actually assign that mission owner to this SPE, right? So there can be a continuation of knowledge of risk as it's operating. So we've assigned the manager, we've assigned the owner. Actually, we're assigning the owner type. You could have a group, but in this case, we're going to take an individual for that purpose. And then we're actually put A. Welchel as the name of that owner. And then as this completes, we're going to see that we have a list of things we can pull from. We're also doing the verification, make sure we didn't click the wrong thing. But our next task is to actually look at the permissions. What permissions do we need? Now, what you'll see here is a difference from if you've ever managed Windows environments before. What did you use to do? Hopefully you didn't do this. Hey, when someone comes on board and says, hey, I need to make an admin change. Well, I'm not saying anyone has done this, but sometimes what used to happen is someone will say, oh, I'll just put you in enterprise admins for a few minutes and you get it done, you're done, right? Or get them out. The problem is no one ever takes them out, right? But in this case, you can get very, very specific. If someone just needs directory read access to the Entra, that's great. We add that one thing. And then when someone needs that other section, which we're going to add another permission in just a second, this other permission, I believe, is a reporting read, not a reporting read write, but just a reporting read. Then we'll have that added as well. What you'll notice on here is it's always good to trust but verify, as they say. So in this particular scenario, we're going to take a look at what we looked at and said, is this really what I wanted? It's always good to be look at that and confirm. And then what you'll see here that we do have some policy settings that we have set up. Things like requiring a justification. This can be really good for compliance purposes to kind of say, hey, if you required this or if you requested this NPE, what was the justification for it? We're expecting to see that. So the other key item here is it does give some elements of risk indicators. You see those you saw those yellow boxes just a second ago. But now faster than I can talk is now completed. Now, if I was to pause it, what it was also do is have the option to have someone to approve it if it was a high risk item. Now, it may not be that you need to have a full person approve it as long as it's doing governance and reporting. But in this case, now we're actually going in to verify that what you were expecting was actually created. So now in this case, we're briefly looking at an account, wasn't the right one, but now we're going to pull up the right account. And what we're going to see is this is, I believe it's OpenAI 1234. You'll see the comments, meaning it confirmed it reached out to Microsoft Entra. It created via the Graph API. And now you can see through this visual that these are definitely the right permissions. That's what we were all expecting. And so this is a kind of the way to confirm that that was what was needed. Now, the other element I'll kind of briefly mention before we rotate to the next section is there is that one section about updating in that information. If we wanted to do that, we could actually go back to the beginning and add more access. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to skip to that next box. And that next box was all about do you still need access and reviewing that access. So this is a case where we can actually take a look at what amount of access we had. And if you remember when we created this MPE, we had just the right amount of access. We had read for directory, read for reports. That's great. But this kind of stuff is not good. We can see directory, read, write, all. Now, this is for just demonstration purposes, right? We're not really setting that up on the Entra tenant. But you can see from here, though, it definitely gives you the visibility to know what's at risk. And if you need to, you can certainly pull it back. So stand by. So now we've seen the demo. We kind of have this visual. I'll give just a few quick notes. If you were kind of super excited, and I see everyone jumping up and down to taking notes, which is great. You may be wondering, like, what do you do next, right? The very first thing is actually done. You can check that box, become aware. You're here at this session. You're learning about these topics. If not just here, but there are some other NPE or identity related sessions so I think it's great if you visit those as well. Become enabled. In just a moment, I'll have a QR code. If you're not really keen on QR codes, I'll totally get it. It does have a short link you can copy down as well. You can just take a picture of that if you'd like to. We'll be at booth 717. Happy to take any questions there. I'll have a few minutes as well here. Become pilot ready. I recommend that to consider thinking about what kind of assets you have and what it's just understanding what NPEs you might be using already today. It's really very important. And the last item connects up to the top item, which is if anyone's read the Mythical Man Month, it was actually written a while ago, the year I was born. But Frederick Brooks was a really smart guy. And he basically had a comment of, he was kind of like doing Agile before it was cool in a way. And he basically said, plan to throw one away, you will anyway. And so the last item was just be iterative, right? Be thinking about how you're going to pull knowledge from how you're doing it, and then think of it in those terms. So the last note I had on the bottom was just a consideration that Azure, these other AI elements, the Savient piece as well, these are all market-ready capabilities. So to the extent you're ready to do some of that testing, we're happy to further assist in any way we can. I do have some contact information, QR code. If you're not keen on that, like I mentioned, has a short link. And we're happy to take visits and information at the booth 717. I've got my card here as well. And I think we might have time for maybe a question or two. And if not, that's totally okay. We're happy to take questions at the booth as well. And most important of all, thank you for being here at AFCEA TechNet Augusta. It's a great conference, and hope you have a wonderful rest of the conference. And thank you for being here for this session. Thank you.